Antler hunting 101. Cover insane amounts of ground. You are increasing your likelihood of finding an antler.
My name is Laura Zara.
Make no face.
I'm a survival and backcountry specialist.
Don't fall into that trap. We just got chased down the mountain by a very angry swarm of bees.
I have a hard time explaining what I do and what my life looks like, but it's way easier to just show you.
Jawbone of another elk to get the ivory out. It's just not the best spot to be.
Learn what it takes to become decivilized.
Antler hunting, one of my all-time favorite obsessions. Basically, all deer species shed their antlers every single year, and then you can go run around in the mountains and find them wherever they've fallen off the head of that animal. Doesn't sound that fun when you explain it, but let me tell you, after I found my first antler, I was entirely hooked, and now I spend probably about 3 months a year in the mountains just looking for these things. All the species that have antlers shed at slightly different times. It's usually sometime in the winter after the rut. So you'll have moose that lose them first. It's usually around December. And then you have deer species, both whitetail and muley, usually around January into March, depending on where you are geographically. And then elk lose last. It's like March, mid-March into April is when they're dropping their antlers. If an animal is injured or if it's a really big bull or buck, then they tend to shed sooner. Some people call it horn hunting, even though technically it's antlers. Antlers are shed every year, horns always stay on. There's kind of a debate about which one it is it horns or antlers? It's kind of like when you call a bison a buffalo. Whatever you call it, I think it's super fun. So cool! When I first started telling people I was obsessed with shed hunting, I think they thought I was just looking for these storage sheds and that I just had some crazy collection of sheds in my yard, which is funny because I don't even have a yard. What? Sheds are shed antlers, so there's that. I'm not going out looking for small buildings. Shed hunting has seasons in some areas. So there's some places where there's closure certain times a year and it doesn't open till shed hunting, and that's to make sure that people aren't in there putting stress on these animals when they're kind of weak for making it through the winter. So there's always kind of this dilemma in the early season when some of the animals have lost their antlers and some of them are still holding.
I have a total dilemma. So there's an elk right where I want to go, and he still has his antlers. So if I go, then I risk pushing him out of here. But if I don't go, today was all for nothing.
You know the antlers are somewhere there, but patience in that moment is everything. Because not only are you gonna not stress out the animals, but you're gonna be able to, instead of just finding maybe one set of antlers, find like a pile. It's under this magical tree. Always had the dream. You just come up to this magical tree that has like a pile of antlers sitting there under it. I tend to take everything to the extreme, so I go out to these super remote places to look for antlers, but honestly, sometimes people do better much closer to town. And it's pretty cool that way because there's no age limit. You can have kids doing it, you can have people who are much older doing it, like this amazing badass woman who's basically my spirit animal, and I hope I am still finding sheds when I'm 83 years old. One of the most common questions I get is, what do I do with my antlers? And I think it's different for everyone. I personally don't have the heart to cut them up and use them for stuff yet. I think I've made one belt buckle, but I pretty much have them sitting all around my house, and I sit in piles of them and look at them. But people make furniture, people make lamps, people make knife handles. You can make all sorts of stuff out of them, or you can just look at them because they're kind of the most beautiful things in the world. There is no exact science to shed hunting, and there's no guarantee. You could be out in a place where these animals are hanging out all the time, and you might not find a single shed. Honestly, all an animal has to do is be in a location for 1 minute, and that's the second that its antlers fall off, and if you don't find that exact spot, you're not gonna find the antlers. That being said, there's definitely some tricks in there, ways that you can increase your odds, and the first one is just finding the animals, finding where they're hanging out that time of year. Are they browsing or are they grazing? Out here, a lot of times when the deer are losing their antlers, there's snow on the ground, so they're browsing, they're not feeding on the grass. You're not looking for a buck in the spring. You're looking for a buck in the middle of the winter. You really need to get into the mind of that animal and try to figure out exactly where they're eating. If they're using a water source, is it probably bedded down in the sun that time of year? Looking at well-traveled routes between those areas. If there's deep snow, sometimes it really consolidates animals into one area. They're not moving around as much. So if you can find those areas where there's lots of scat, lots of sign. So all those factors come into play. If you find the deer, sometimes you find the antlers.
So I was looking at this deer. I found this deer antler.
I actually recently started using Onyx to mark the exact location that I found antlers. And it's really cool. I can see almost this pattern that starts to form. And then when I go back, I know, all right, last year they were hanging out here that time of year. And sometimes it is eerily similar. I have found antlers from the same exact animal in the same exact spot year after year. It's pretty cool, but it's not a given like everything in shed hunting.
2 seconds later. I'm telling you, these little oh look it, there's another one there. This is amazing. These little draws. So cool.
Sometimes it might not make sense to you personally. There might be some really rocky part of a mountain and you're like, I wouldn't want to go there. Why would an elk want to go there? But a lot of times I will find antlers in the rockiest, craziest areas where I'm having a hard time even picturing an elk and it's there. Or I'm looking way up high for an elk out here in the mountains and I find a perfectly matched set of antlers on a beach where I'm camped.
So I found a wolf jaw at my camp and I was like, maybe I should look for the rest of it on the beach. That's where I'm camped. And so I start glassing. I was not expecting this. Oh my God, you think it's a match or no?
Tracking is also a really important part of this. So when you're out there, just being able to follow an animal's tracks. If you see an elk and he's got only one antler, then you know that somewhere he's been in probably the last 24 hours, you're gonna find that.
I've been following this elk's tracks for so long. He's the only one up here. Seems so unlikely when it happens.
I tracked this elk to his antler and then I kept wandering around and I'm like, man, I really wanna match this up, but where am I gonna find it? And then I found this rub and right at the bottom of it. So I know he lost that antler first and then he went up to that tree and knocked the other one off. So if you see a fresh rub in a time of year when elk are shedding, check it out.
You know, I don't normally find elk antlers by rubs, but they always draw my eye anyway. And sometimes looking really pays off.
I'm a minimalist and I do not like having a ton of things, but if there is one thing that you are gonna bring and invest in, it is a good pair of binoculars and it makes all the difference.
Wow, came all the way over here. I was sure this is a deer antler. It's a stick.
I used to have this really crappy pair of binoculars and I didn't understand why everyone used them antler hunting. And then I got a good pair and it completely changed my game.
This came to the top of this for a stick.
I find a lot of sticks, and when you see something up a mountain, I have literally walked probably a mile down and up to get to a stick.
And it's a stick.
If I had a good pair of binoculars, I could have just glassed that, known what it was, it would have saved me all that time, and I probably would have found another antler. And get used to looking at a lot of sticks and being angry at sticks that you never thought you could be angry at. And sometimes I even want to take the sticks home because they look so much like antlers.
So I just want to talk for a second about restraint because there's nothing I want to do more than run down and see what I got. But I have a good vantage point right here with glass and try to find the other side.
Just know your binos help you investigate less sticks or at least put in less steps to get to more sticks. Less steps to investigate more sticks. There's like a lot of tongue twisters in shed hunting.
Classic example of the game, 10 more steps, which started down there and then ends up going to ungodly heights because in 10 more steps, that's where the antler is. And that stick looks just like an antler. It's only 10 more steps. It's never 10 more steps.
I've had some long nights because I played 10 more steps a little bit too much.
Saw this bull from down below and I kept telling myself it's gonna be hell to get to, but it'll be worth it. And it was.
Bulls are animals, but I'm talking about bulls, like bulls, not bulls. So it's an important distinction. So out here in the West, I never leave a bowl alone.
Just found these in the bowl, and oh, what's that? Another one.
I'm always going to the bowls. I'm always looking.
Hello, Antler.
I don't know what it is about bowls. I think maybe it's because they feel protected.
Oh, look at that.
Maybe it's the way the wind's pulled through and they can smell things.
Same bowl.
Maybe it just feels like it's, you know, wrapping around them in a warm, secure way.
I'm in another bowl, and guess what I found? Man, I'm just too late on all these. Better late than never.
The way the land kind of naturally draws things down, whether it's from water flow or just gravity. Sometimes even if an antler's shed on the top, they roll into the bottom, and the flow of water certain times a year will take these antlers down.
Same bowl, found a dead elk, cow, but bowls just gather everything. What else am I gonna find?
I actually find a unusual amount of antlers on the other side of logs.
That would be the seers. It's so beautiful.
In my eyes, I feel like when the animal is jumping over and then hits the ground, it like the percussion makes the antlers fall off.
Look at it. Okay, where's the second one?
Sometimes I almost walk by antlers because they are on the far side of logs. So I always just check both sides. And strangely, there are a lot of log antlers out there. So inspect your logs.
Oh.
When you're out there, you can also find other cool things and keep your eye out for them.
This is one of my favorite things to find. A little tip off of an antler that got broken during the rut. So cool. Just tells the story of what happened here.
I know people have matched up sheds, 2 broken tips that they found like pretty far away, and like it fits together like a puzzle. So that's a dream of mine.
Scavengers did a good job on this cow elk.
Out here in the West, everyone knows we have elk, and elk have ivories, which are kind of like the remnants of back when they used to have these fighting tusks. And they look like teeth, but they're not really teeth. They're actually old tusks, so they have a very different root system. Both the cows and the bulls have them, and if I find a dead elk, I have some cool little tricks for getting those ivories out easily. I like using the animal's own jawbone, which is kind of weird. You kind of use this percussive hit to actually get the ivory out, so that's something I like to do.
Use the jawbone of another elk to get the ivory out.
Finding deadheads out there is always amazing. I'm always looking down in draws, drainages, creeks. Animals often go to water when they're hurt, wounded, sick, tired. They'll make their way down to water to drink, and they also can't really climb back up if they're weak. So a lot of animals die there.
You never know what you're gonna find out here. And I just found a dead mountain lion. So at the lower jaw, one of the claws, well, 2 of the claws, and one of the upper canines. I can't find the skull, but I'm gonna have to dig through this rotten pile.
I am always sad when there's some epic beast that roamed this mountain that met his end there, but I also enjoy taking his skull home to honor that animal and look at his beautiful antlers and think about how all his genetics are hopefully still there, especially when it's a real weirdo, because I love the weirdos.
Oh my God! That's the coolest thing I've ever found in my entire life! I'm freaking out! I can't handle it. It is such a freak.
So cool.
Ah! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh
What the my God. Like, legitimately, the coolest antler I have ever seen.
Here in Montana, it just became legal to find and keep dead, winter-killed bighorn sheep skulls.
my God! Oh my gosh! This is amazing!
I am obsessed with doing that. It gets you out in the craziest terrain. That being said, it's really important that you bring in and report any of the ram skulls to Fish and Game within 24 hours. I always try to take pictures where it is and mark the location exactly if I'm not in service and can't call right away. It's just really important to make sure that you check wherever you are what the exact legalities are before you make assumptions. It's different everywhere, but you can find some really cool stuff. And a lot of states, you can legally keep certain animals as long as you follow protocol. Bottom line is, if you cover more ground, you're probably gonna find more antlers. Unless you are just have a sixth sense, unless you like know where animals specifically are hanging out, if you lived in an area for a really long time, or you have a good friend who knows an area really well, that's always a really nice thing. For everyone who has never found a shed, I hope you learned something from watching this video, and I hope that this is your year. I believe in you. So this is kind of the... I thought I heard an insect. Oh, I did. There's an insect out here. Watch out. So I was like, oh, I had a thing. And then I was like, antlers. And then I got confused. Binoculars, brain changers. The deer is, not the deers. There's no deers, plural of deers. Deers is. The funny thing about being out in the wilderness is you're out in the wilderness.